packages, I should say, that were sent to the Clintons, the Obamas, two sent to Maxine Waters in D.C. and L.A., John Brennan, Eric Holder, and there's another package that is being investigated that was sent to Joe Biden. So it's been quite a 24 hours. We'll keep you posted on all the latest. Honored to have in studio with us, and she's doing a little overtime early because she's on the air at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. with her entire family, the Alter family, on Sirius XM radio. And that's on Radio Andy.
It's on Radio Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah. 10 a.m. Radio Andy, Alter Family Politics.
Alter Family Politics. And Charlotte Alter of Time Magazine is here with us in studio. How are you, Charlotte?
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Thanks for coming in early this morning. And Charlotte's going to be with us. Folks, we're taking your calls as well throughout the morning, your calls and thoughts, especially on the breaking news. So I guess we do well to start there. What is your reaction to what's happening in the past 24 hours?
I'm finding it very alarming.
Yeah.
To me, it seems like very clear that this is something that's targeted against liberals, progressives, and the media, likely from somebody who lumps all those things together,
right,
which is itself kind of a big problem, that somebody thinks that George Soros and CNN are the same thing. But I really think it's impossible to divorce this from the rhetoric that's coming from the president, that the media is the enemy of the people, and that, the George Soros, there's an unbelievable amount of mistrust and also hostility towards the media right now, and I have felt it when I've been on the road.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I felt it a lot. So my beat has changed a little bit. So when I was covering the 2016 election, I felt it a lot because I was talking to Trump people. Mm-hmm. Now my beat is more on the progressive side, and I cover the resistance movements, right, and what's happening with the Democrats in the midterms, which means that I actually see a lot less of it, because while there is some skepticism, there's not. When I was covering conservatives, occasionally during the 2016 election, introducing myself as a journalist was like saying, hello, I'm a vampire. Mm-hmm. People would just absolutely, saying, hi, I'm a journalist. Can I ask you some questions? Would be like saying, hey, I'm a vampire. Can I suck your blood? Yeah, it was just an absolutely recoil from me. Mm-hmm. I got kicked out of 2 bars for being a journalist.
Kicked out of bars?
Yeah.
Oh
well,
God.
I was reporting in the bars. It wasn't like they found out that I was, yeah.
You're right, okay. But that's crazy.
Yeah.
And as you said, you can't divorce his rhetoric from it. And I'm glad that, people are saying that, because a couple people yesterday were like, well, let's not jump to conclusions. But it's almost impossible not to now, because, as you said, this is targeting all liberals, all Democrats, or people who were appointed to office by Democrats, and people that he honestly has attacked, mm-hmm, and that have been on his, quote unquote enemies list. That's my terminology. There was a Republican on MSNBC yesterday saying that, well, it happens on both sides, because look what happened to Steve Scalise. But no one on the Democratic side was attacking Steve Scalise. And I'm not even clear that the person who shot Steve Scalise had a specific political motivation. It wasn't overt. So I don't buy into that false equivalency. But these were assassination attempts,
yeah.
Charlotte. I mean, at 2 former presidential families,
right,
White House families. I mean, this is the kind of stuff you hear about. I don't even know if you hear about this in so-called third world countries. Normally, people try to assassinate incumbents or political opponents in opposition. You don't often see folks try to assassinate people who've left and retired and are out of office,
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, you have basically, so here's the thing. I think that we have to be really careful about this, because the truth is we don't know who's behind these bombs yet.
Right.
It could be a total crazy person,
Right.
It could be somebody we have no idea, right? Um, so I don't want to say that we definitely know that this is Trump's fault because he said, lock her up, and he, said the media is the enemy of the people.
Right.
But I do think that I do think it strains credulity to say that this has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it clearly is part of a climate of hostility towards the media and towards and towards Democrats that Trump is clearly, if not created, he's poured gasoline on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what else is great? Charlotte Alter with his folks. What's also interesting about it, he was riding the so-called caravan and blaming that on Democrats, and he was still, I think, trying to ride some kind of Kavanaugh wave, if there's such a thing, whatever that is.
Right.
And then it's like immediately, all of that is now overshadowed. That's bad enough in a political context, and it's wrong to exploit those events in a political context, I think. But then now you have Democrats at this point that we know of, not any Republicans, victimized by these bomb scares.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever seen, and your dad and I talk all the time. I think I expect he would be. I can't wait to hear what he has to say this morning. I expect even he would be hard pressed to remember a time as chaotic as this. Most people's point of reference is 1968. But in terms of what's in the news cycle,
yeah,
this is almost crazier than 1968.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't alive then, but
of course.
but yeah, I mean, honestly, it freaks me out a lot because it reminds me of The Handmaid's Tale, and I know that we're not supposed to I know that it's considered immature to sort of compare these things to a fictional TV show, but people talk about The Handmaid's Tale a lot when they're talking about reproductive rights, because obviously that's a show about women who are forced to give birth, but there's also a lot of other stuff that happens in it, and one of the things that happens is that an entire newsroom gets gunned down, and there's a massacre in a newsroom, and those are the violent attacks on the press is a sign of a growing fascism usually.
And honestly, Charlotte, tell me if you think I'm wrong. I don't really separate the attack on CNN from the news about Khashoggi. Who was a journalist.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Trump is directly responsible for that either, but there's just this climate of attacking the press.
Yeah.
And I was saying the other day, in terms of all the stories that affect the midterm cycle, and we'll get to that in a moment, the Khashoggi story has legs. I mean, people have really started looking at it, really interested and intrigued by what that's about. But here again is a journalist who was banned from Saudi Arabia after he wrote a negative article about Donald Trump.
Yeah. Well, I think it also gets to, it gets to this thing where, I think a lot of these people think that this is justified, or if not justified. So, okay, when you talk to conservatives about this, there's always a whataboutism. Yeah, it's always well, CNN is always attacking the president. They never give him any credit, and they're always giving him a hard time. And there's this conflation of criticism as because we use the word attack for two different things. Attack means verbal criticism, right, but it also means physical violence, right? And I think that people conflate those things. And honestly, that happens on the left too. People conflate verbal criticisms or verbal attacks with physical attacks, and that's what they're doing on the right now with this, where they say, oh, this is all part of it, what they called him this, they called him that, they had it coming, they did this, they did that, and it's none of the people who have received these bombs ever sent anybody else a bomb. This is not it's so there's a real kind of fake you're right, there's a false equivalence.
And honestly, none of the people, I talked to Carl earlier, I don't think any of the people who were sent these bombs are known in recent months for engaging in over the top or confrontational political rhetoric. I mean,
no way.
I mean, the two most engaged, even if you want to say that. I mean, John Brennan and the White House have been directly, at odds with each other. Maxine Waters in the White House.
Yeah.
But,
That's true.
the Obamas are notoriously quiet. Hillary Clinton, responds when she's forced to. I don't know when we've heard anything. I don't know when's the last time we heard anything from Bill Clinton.
Right.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Right.
So, I mean, these are not people who have been saying things to really anybody.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's clearly there's something unhinged about this, and that's what I think people find really scary.
Now, you're about to go on the road.
Yeah.
First of all, and as we're talking about journalists and what's going on in this climate, you feel safe? Are you worried?
I actually am not worried because for myself personally, I'm not going to Trump rallies. I'm just because that's not because I don't cover them, and they're not important, but just because that's not the purpose of my trip. I'm taking a road trip across the Midwest, and I'm visiting 6 women candidates, many of them first timers who have looked like they're about to either have a good shot to or are now favored to flip Republican held seats.
Good. Okay.
So I don't think that I am not going into the lion's den,
Okay.
but also I'm going with my friend who is a videographer.
Okay.
And it'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
You had a big story last week how the anti-Trump resistance is organizing its outrage, and we might have seen, some of you may have seen Charlotte, like I did, on television, talking about her coverage and how women are making a difference. I say women's wave as much as I say blue wave, because that's really what's going on, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Although the story it's tricky because women are only a small part of it, not a small part of it. They're actually a huge part of it, but it's just a portion of the story, because a lot of the women who are most involved in the midterms are the women who kind of thought everything was fine in America in 2015 and 2016, and then they woke up and Trump was president and they were like, what the hell, right?
Right.
These are mostly white ladies in the suburbs, like the Women's March moms. You also,
Right.
and who were kind of like, oh, everything's fine under Obama, like, la, la, la. And then now they're like, I have to be knocking on doors every weekend. But you also have...
Were these some, too, that also voted for Trump? Because they still talk about that 53%.
Yeah, I have not met anybody who voted for Trump and is now part of the resistance.
Gotcha, okay. All right.
The truth is, yes. Okay, there is a revised estimate on the 53%. It's still a plurality, like more white women voted for Trump than voted for Clinton, but it's now 47% to like 45%. Like it's still bad. Okay.
I never really bought into the 53%. I could not believe. I just couldn't see, because I don't know anybody who would do that, and I don't mean to just talk about people in my. I just could not fathom that over 50% of white women would vote for Donald Trump.
So
I gave them more credit.
It doesn't surprise me, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, it doesn't. Here's why. This helps me understand it. Okay. So let's fast forward. Let's fast forward 30 years into the future. Ivanka Trump has been a senator from Maryland. She's been Secretary of the Treasury. And then it is, the election of 2032. And she's like, I want to run for president. Would I ever vote for her? No. I would never vote for her. She's like, there's never been a woman president. Ivanka Trump, will be the first woman president. Would you ever vote for her?
No.
Right. So it's like that. I think that there were a ton of people, particularly conservatives, but also particularly people who just remember the Clinton scandals really, really well. They're on the older side. They felt like Clinton got away with it. They felt like Clinton got away with the Monica Lewinsky thing, and they're like, I cannot believe they're back. I hate Bill. I hate the Clintons more than I want a woman president. And the other way to think about it too is that, like, look, we talk about intersectionality. So we talk about intersectionality as something that affects only people who exist at the intersection of different oppressions, right? But it's also true that intersectionality, or the concept of intersectionality, can also apply to overlapping privileges, right? So if you're a white suburban woman, you're married, you're a woman, but that's only part of your identity. You're also white, so you benefit from whiteness. You also have some privilege because presumably, you're maybe living in a suburb, maybe your husband works in a financial industry, you're a mother, that's part of your identity too. And so a lot of these women Trump supporters aren't like women first. They identify more primarily with another aspect of their identity, and a lot of times those other aspects, whether it's they're an evangelical, they're somebody whose husband works in the coal industry, there's somebody who is worried, their husband's a police officer, like they identify more strongly with other things beyond being a woman.
So the women, Charlotte Alter with us, folks, 8 minutes for the hour, 866-99 series. The women that you're encountering who are running for office are part of the resistance, though. It even if they didn't vote for Trump, don't they still fit some of those characteristics you described?
Totally.
Still, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what is so okay. Here's what's tricky about this. So my story was about the sort of grassroots resistance to Trump and how that's translating into midterms organizing. And there's three parts of it. There's the suburban moms who've started all these indivisible groups, which are largely, almost entirely female and largely white, and they're in some of the suburban districts that Democrats really need to win.
Okay.
There's also a tremendous amount of organizing around voters of color in the South, in particular Black voters in Florida and Georgia, because we saw in 2017 that Black voters delivered that Senate seat to Democrats in Alabama.
Yeah.
And now there are groups that are doing really good work on the ground in Florida and Georgia to try to get those to try to get Stacey Abrams elected governor and Andrew Gillum elected governor of Florida. So that's also a huge part of this, is that there are many, many, many Black and brown voters in the South who do not have access to the political system. Like, they're not on any of the voter rolls that people go around to like use to knock on doors. So they're just being totally ignored by the Democratic Party. So there's a lot of organizing around that. And then there's also a lot of organizing around getting young people to vote. And so there are groups that are on college campuses that are trying to get, people under 29 to show up this year. And it looks like they might, already turnout is up 15 points from 2014 among this age group, just in the primaries, which is huge.
Yeah, I saw you right about that too. So I'm not. Some of the punditry is trying to pour water on how many women are going to vote, how big of a blue wave there is. That there's those are saying that it's evening out now. There's the enthusiasm gap is closed, but through your reporting and other things I've seen, I just don't believe that, because you have already seen an unprecedented number of young people get involved, and we're seeing so many women get involved. I think that this is still going to be a blue wave.
Yeah. I mean, I am honestly not sure. Just
Really?
Truly just because I am like out of the after 2016, I'm just like out of the predictions business.
You got that business. Huh?
Yeah, so like I think it absolutely could be. I also think that there are like a lot of ways that Republicans definitely have a path to keeping the House. The thing with this kind, and here's the other part of this, which Democrats really need to remember, is that it all comes down to like just a couple dozen seats, 24 seats,
right?
And many of those seats are not, so there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm, and there's opportunity for seats to be picked up, but the enthusiasm is not necessarily in the areas where seats can be picked up.
In those 24 seats, in those 24 areas. Yeah, that's interesting. Charlotte Alter of Time Magazine with us in studio. Folks, don't go away. Stay right here. 866-99-SIRIUS, 866-997-4748. We'll get you to your calls, give you the latest updates on the latest bomb scares. A ninth package addressed to Joe Biden is being investigated in Delaware. Stay tuned. Sirius XM Progress 127 Resistance Radio. Get woke and vote. Get out the vote. Get ready for impeachment. This is MIP.